and is really science. So here is one brain. Let's just say A is our known visible universe. And on B, we can see that there are multiple slabs, each one a different universe. And when they come together, they may explode and create a new Big Bang. And it may be that our known visible universe is one of those Big Bangs. It's been thought that we may live in a multiverse and have daughter universes. And I will talk more about this later, but in quantum physics, quantum mechanics, which is the very, very small, it suggests that maybe there are probabilities of bubbles forming other bubbles and daughter universes. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Another idea is that math may suggest all possible outcomes of a situation. We will talk in a minute about Max Tegmark's idea that mathematics, if it's coherent and cohesive, describes all kinds of real universes. We just don't see them. So here's the idea of a child universe evolving out of a mother universe. It detaches, and so you may have multiple universes that can't communicate with each other, as you see here. And yet some of these bubbles may allow other bubbles, other universes to form, and so you have universes begetting universes, begetting universes, and pretty soon you see that the house is full of universes. And so here are the individual universes in a theoretician's mind's eye of what the universes really look like. And it's pretty amazing to think that there may be multiple universes that either have the same physical properties as ours or more likely have different physical properties. And I'm going to come back to that at the very end because that's an important point to ask. So the universe we're living in may be one of the slices in a big loaf of bread, as you see here. But again, it's really unlikely that one universe can interact with another, although there's a couple ideas out there that we'll talk about. Maybe gravity, for example, can leach from one universe to another. And that's why gravity is so weak. Now, I understand that gravity sculpts the entire known visible universe that we have because it's always attractive and there's a lot of it. But in terms of the 4 or 5 major forces in our known visible universe, it is the weakest. Maybe it's weak because gravity can go, if you will, from one of these daughter universes to another. Hasn't been proved, but may be true. So here's the idea of the mathematical universes. Maybe math is more than just a description. Maybe it's a prescription. Maybe it's a fundamental reality. This sort of sounds like Plato in a way. And as we will see, maybe any mathematical formula that comes up that's coherent and reasonable does describe the universe that we just haven't seen yet or don't know about. So keep those mathematical formulas going. One of the 2 major books that you might want to buy if you're interested in multiple ideas or multiple universes is from this cosmologist, Max Tegmark, who's pretty famous. And he has a typology, if you will, of 4 levels of universe. The first one is kind of what we saw before in the quilted universe, is that there may be multiple universes in a almost infinite slab, but each universe has a horizon. There just hasn't been time enough for light to reach beyond that horizon, and we can't see the other universes. And maybe that's chaotic, they come and go. The second idea is that universes may not have the same physical constants as in number 1, what we just looked at, but may have different physical constants, and that's called chaotic inflation. The one that a lot of cosmologists seem to be enamored with right now is number 3, and that's Hugh Edwards. And his history is interesting. That's a story for another day. Is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. And I will show you that. I'm not going to go through the math. There's an old saying that for every formula you put in a lecture or a book, you decrease the readership by 50%. It's sort of a half-life thing. I'm not going to do formulas for you, but I am going to show you pictures that sort of show what he was talking about. And finally, Max Tegmark's contribution is maybe there's an ultimate ensemble, and these different universes have different mathematics describing them. So any coherent mathematical equation shows a universe. We just have to sort of try to comprehend it. We said before that we don't know exactly what space and time is, and we don't know if our universe is finite or infinite. But obviously, the larger it is in terms of being finite, the closer it is to seeming to be infinite to us. Again, the universal speed limit is pretty slow considering the distances, so we don't know if there is an edge or not an edge to our universe. What is beyond our horizon, we just don't know. If it's a curved universe and it doesn't seem to be such, like a sphere, then if you looked far enough, you might look back and see the back of your head. We haven't done that yet. So far it seems like the universe is flat and expanding very, very fast. So here's TEGMARK'S level 1. It's beyond our cosmological horizon, just as a ship on the sea can't see beyond its horizon. We can't see beyond the ability of light to reach us for the age of the universe. And it's a prediction of eternal or chaotic inflation, indicating, again, like the quilted universes, that there's multiple Hubble volumes, multiple known visible universes within themselves, but they're all separated from each other, so they don't interact. They are beyond our cosmological horizon. Time didn't allow for light to reach us. Here it is again on the left. You can see we're at the center. Our horizon is the circle. And yet, if there is a lot of space, then we will not see other universes. They will all be separate, sort of the quilted idea. Again, in this model, all of these will have the same physical properties. All the particles will seem to have the same energy and forces, but we just don't know that they're there. TEGMARK'S level 2 is an infinite set of distinct universes, each with different laws of physics, and it's an answer to the fine-tuning problem. We're here because of all the gazillion and infinite number of universes, all with different knobs turned in different ways. Ours happens just to be the one in which the knobs are turned in just the right way for us to be here. So in a multiverse, in this chaotic inflation theory, there's a stretching and it continues forever. But some regions of space stop stretching and form distinct bubbles. The distinct regions of space that are forever unobservable, again, because the space between here and there keeps inflating faster than the speed of light. And all of these seem to have different physical constants, at least in our mind's eye and with the mathematics. This idea comes out of string theory, and one of the problems is if you look at the landscapes, that's what it's called, of what each of these mathematical string constant ideas create, we're talking about 10 to the 500th power. That means a 10 with 500 zeros type of universes. That's a lot of universes. That's even more than the national debt. Here's an idea of universes giving rise to other universes and then stopping. And that's the idea of daughter multiple universes. And it may be that in each of these universes, those knobs all turn in such a way that life can't be produced because stars, galaxies, planets, moons are not produced. We don't know what all these knobs are, although we have an idea of a lot of the major ones. The third level I've really not talked too much about, and this is the one that really cosmologists seem to like a lot, and it's called the many worlds or the multiple worlds interpretation of Hugh Everett III. Hugh Everett in 1957 at the Institute for Advanced Studies with Princeton suggested that there really is a relation of multiple worlds with quantum mechanics. And each possible observation splits into a completely different universe. So there's this constant splitting and splitting into parallel versions. Stay with me, I'm going to show you pictures of this. So there may be in an infinite set of universes multiple copies of you, one of which passed this test or didn't pass that test. Actually, there's a joke that says this student that's applying for his PhD qualifying exams, the teacher says, you know, you may have passed in other worlds, but you didn't pass in this world. I guess that wasn't very funny to that student. In a way, it's like Yogi Berra says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And here's just an example. Level 1, would you like to go for a drink? I'm sorry, too tired. Would you like to go for a drink? That's in a galaxy far, far away. It's a completely separate galaxy. That's the level 1 that I tried to show you before, the quilted universe. Yeah, sure, I'll go. But in level 3, in this multiple worlds, if you ask somebody, would you like to go for a drink? That's a decision, an observation, and it's that information that then splits into 2 separate, unattached, if you will, set of universes. So in one universe, she goes for a drink. In the other universe, she doesn't go for a drink. This is a little bit like that movie Sliders, if you will. So it's a splitting. Here is the famous Schrodinger cat. I really don't want to go into that. I think we've all heard enough about that cat. But basically, as you see on the left, the radioactive sign, there is a radioactive element that if it undergoes a radioactive degeneration, it hits cyanide, and cyanide may kill the cat. And up until the cat is observed in this closed box that you can't see in, the cat is considered by quantum mechanics, this is not intuitive, this is too small for our brain to see in a way. The math is good, is great, but the cat is both alive and dead. And until you look, you really don't know which split it occurred upon. TEGMARK'S level 4 is that if there's a math that describes it, there's a universe that is described. And so he feels that mathematical existence is equal to physical existence. And so equally real, all universes that can be described by different mathematical structures, if you can think about it and it's mathematically coherent, then there's a universe for it. And that assumes that there's a whole lot of universes out there that the math describes. And our job is just to try to figure out what math formula corresponds to which type of universe. This is sort of an idea of Hawking and others, is that mathematics is really an amazing phenomenon. What is it that breathes fire into the equations and makes the universe for them to describe? The enormous success of mathematics and the natural science is something bordering on the mysterious, and there's no rational explanation for it. Or as Wigner and others say, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics is something we didn't expect nor deserve. So the question comes up, is mathematics a discovery of actual universes out there or an invention? So here are the 4 types of Max Tegmark. One is you have regions beyond our cosmological horizon. Going down on the lower left, you see level 2 is that there's bubbles giving rise to bubbles with different mathematical values. Number 3 at the upper right, you can see the idea of quantum mechanics and multiple mathematical structures. And level 3 on the bottom right are the many worlds of Hugh Everett. So here's the idea of inflation. As I said before, the Big Bang is that point right next to the space sign on the left. And all of a sudden, it underwent a exponential expansion for reasons that we don't know. Whether it's related to the dark energy that we have now at the other end of our universe, we're not certain. But it does look like this expansion, this inflationary universe, explains lots of the problems that the Big Bang had. And I don't want to go into those right now. It is interesting that Alan Guth was in his ninth and a half year of his postdoctoral training, 9.5 years after his PhD, didn't have a job, was at Stanford, came up with this idea of inflationary universes, and was then given a full professorship at MIT immediately. So this is something that most cosmologists love. Eternal inflation is again a burst of spatial expansion. It seems to be a stretching of space that happens over and over and over again. And from a bird's eye view, it would appear that the cosmos is riddled with these innumerable, widely separated regions, each being an aftermath of a portion of space transitioning out of these inflationary bursts. In some regions in space will go on inflating forever, and these regions that exit inflation will become separate, causally disconnected universes. It doesn't seem like the weakness of gravity really will give us an idea that they're really out there. Why multiple universes? Well, if it happened once, why one when you can have two? Did it come labeled to be used only once? The creation of a universe? If you see one, there may be multiple ones out there. It's kind of like intelligent life that we talked about last week. If it happened once, it may happen again. So here again is the quantum foam and the A, and you can see it gives rise to this slab of the universe, and then it may give rise to multiple non-connecting universes. And that's the basic concept of multiverses. Then they can butt off, and they can have different physical features, or they may have the same physical laws depending on the model. I'm going to go on, and we've already talked here, if you will, about multiple bubble universes giving rise to other bubble universes. So there may be a whole heck of a lot out there for us to go to, E.E. Cummings. It's been suggested by Isaac Asimov, who wrote 500 books, was a professor of biochemistry in New York City and in Boston. And he felt that the best idea of multiple dimensions is this book by Abbott called Flatland, that many of you really, really like. And it suggests that if you're in a two-dimensional world on the left, if a real three-dimensional world exists, like on the right, then you have a sphere coming through your membrane, your galaxy, or your universe. And what you'll see is on the left, because you're only two-dimensional. So there may be multiple dimensions out there that we just don't see and can't even infer. I've really not talked too much about multiple dimensions because I really wanted to talk mostly about multiverses, but it may be tied in to multiple dimensions. So where are the multiple dimensions? String theory requires 10 or 11 or 24 or 25 multiple dimensions to work. Well, it's been suggested that we have 4 dimensions. We all know that as length, width, height, and time. But there may be more dimensions that we just don't see because they're tiny. They're curled up, as you see here, within the minuteness of space-time. And they may contribute, a la string theory, to the creation of our universe or other universes. And this idea is called compactification of these multiple dimensions. So maybe Rod Serling was right. The idea of string theory will suggest that, there's not particulate atoms, is that atoms are of various types, of various energies, are no more than vibrations of strings that are very, very, very small. And string theory has been a very hot area of investigation. It involves very, very complex mathematics. But the reason string theory got everyone's attention is that it was the one way, it appeared, to unite the very, very smooth and large general gravitational relativity of Einstein in 1915, 1916, with the very, very, very small particulate, pixelated quantum physics. It's been hard to merge, if you will, the marble with the wood, the smoothness of gravity with the particulateness of quantum physics, but string theory seemed to be an idea. The problem is, as you've seen, it creates 10 to the 500th power of different landscapes and universes. So it may be that our universe is one of a potentially number of slabs floating in a higher dimensional space, and they're short, they're close to each other, and when they interact, they may create the Big Bang. And it could be that that was the genesis of our known visible universe. The other book that I would invite you to read if you're interested in learning about multiverses is Brian Greene, who, as you know, is a string theorist from Columbia University. And this is a terrific book that I would suggest to you. Finally, I'm going to end with another idea of Brian Greene, and that is maybe we live in a holographic universe. As you know, a hologram is like a blueprint for a skyscraper. It's a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional object. And it's been suggested from black holes, and Stephen Hawking and others have suggested that the information storage capacity of the black hole is not by the volume of its interior, whatever that is, but the area of its event horizon. And so it suggests that the information you required to describe physical phenomenon within any region of space can be fully encoded, believe it or not, by just a surface. Thus, our 3 to 4-dimensional universe could be likened to a holographic projection of those distant 2-dimensional physical processes. And this has been mathematically proven. Well, I'm going to end and suggest that some people have suggested that string theory is not science. Everything I've talked about heretofore today, multiverses, is not science because it can't be tested. But I would suggest, with apologies to Sir Karl Popper, who came up with the idea of falsification, is that testability is not the only factor of scientific reasoning. Pure math can later become applied math. The greatest example of that is non-Euclidean math by Riemann, which came 20, 30, 40 years before Einstein found out that space-time can be curved under the forces of mass and energy. That's what gravity is. So there may be new technologies, larger atom smashers that will allow us to do some things that we can't now. And of course, last slide, we may just be a computer program. I think I will end. Hopefully the computer program will not end. And I will stop now and see if there are any comments or questions about the idea of multiverses. Gina, over to you.
I was just going to let you know that Roby likes to use the chat, and he has quite a few things in the chat area. He early on he talked about how we happen to have the unusual adjusted knobs where we exist, and maybe we're the only one with life in this dimension. Could there then be a multiverse where lots of life exists?
Absolutely, especially if it's infinite. You know, if the universe or number of universes is really infinite, then anything that is not against the law of physics is bound to happen, according to Murray Gell-Mann. So it may be that life is in the laws of physics, the laws of particle physics, and is just a self-organizing principle. Christian de Duve, who won the Nobel Prize for lysosomes, suggested that life is immanent. Life finds a way almost no matter where it is. And that's been shown to be true on our planet. And maybe there's all kinds of life as we know and life as we don't know on an infinite number of other planets. I suspect that's true. Whether we'll ever find out how many depends. Other comments or questions or thoughts?
David or Karen ask, if we're a computer program, who's doing the programming?
Well, my answer would be a very smart programmer. But then the question is, an infinite regress, who programmed him or her?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it goes back, who programmed that programmer?
Mm-hmm.
And who programmed that programmer ad infinitum, ad nauseum? It's been suggested if you just play with the numbers, we know of one universe, but if there's an infinite number, infinite regress of computer programmers, each of which is producing thousands and thousands of programs, we just happen to be one in one, then if you played the odds, there's gazillions and gazillions of programs out there. And so the likelihood is a gazillion to one that we may be a computer program. The other thing that's interesting is that, you know, if you go to the very, very, very tiniest aspect of cosmology, that's called quantum physics, and that's pixelated, that's discrete, that's almost like bytes, 1 or 0, on or off. So, you know, I'd like to think we're not a computer programmer. I think that it's likely we're not. And if you want to know more, I have a slide in follow-up that we could show that shows that we're probably not a computer programmer, or we would have found a glitch at this stage based on what we have studied so far.
I think it would be appropriate to look at that slide.
Okay, let me, next week we're going to talk about travel, not to other universes, but through time. And let me see if I can find that slide really quickly. Here it is. How do you know you're not hooked into the matrix, which is my last slide I just showed you in green? You're in a computer simulated universe. Our world is fundamentally discrete. Well, you can see our brain's processing speed is pretty fast. The best computer is less than that, although that's going to increase rapidly. How realistic would the world seem? Simulators employing emergent strategies. You know, there is this thing called emergence, that 1 and 1 can equal more than 2. And so you would have to really, with this programmer, cross all of your T's and dot all of your I's. You'd have to really try to figure out anything that the people or whatever in the computer program would be able to find in their visible universe. And it's thought that a computer with finite capacities would run out of time or memory, even if the deepest equations were used. Rounding off the errors is a problem, you know. We talked about that last week, is if we put in 3.14 to describe part of a circle versus 3.14 and 59265, 3589795, that's as far as I can go, you come out over time with completely different outcomes. And so you'd have to have pretty incredible computing power and programmers to do that. So I don't think we're in a program. I hope not. And I certainly, if we are, don't want them to turn off the power.
Well, the other end of that, this is Roby, the other end of that was Men in Black at the end of the movie when we were looking for the item on the cat's necklace, and we thought it was really had something else. But in the end, it's basically like one of those little balls that you had earlier, and that it becomes part of just a simple little ball game bouncing off of each other, which is kind of the other end of the dimension.
Robbie, I always thought, I love that. And I always thought it would be a moneymaker if somebody could create pictures of spiral galaxies or even the less impressive elliptical galaxies, put them in little crystal spheres and hang them like either on a tree-like area. And that way you could have sort of a representation of these multiple bubble galaxies, if not universes. The universe at its biggest in our known visible universe, looks like a sponge. There are nodal points, there are filaments, there are voids. It looks like a big old sponge. So that might not be too impressive, but some of the spiral galaxies are very impressive. I think somebody should make some money on that.
One of the things that you said, and I just want to reinforce it, is that these different models create different concepts, but most of the time in science fiction, when we try to deal with competing universes, et cetera, we're trying to figure out a way to communicate between them. So it strikes me that, novels and stories that are about the communication between universes is the issue. And what I've seen in several of those stories over time is that most of the time it opens for a brief period, kind of like a wormhole, and then it goes away. And that we communicate or see another universe, and then it's gone. So that's sort of one of the dimensions.
It's really interesting. A lot of cosmologists apparently say they go into cosmology because of some of the science fiction they read. And we've also seen how science fiction writers really do keep up with the modern cosmology. So one really does involve the other, if not in the absolute study, at least some of the theoretical ideas. So I think they do enhance each other.
I don't see any raised hands, or if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. I think we've covered everything in the chat box.
Any alternate universes out there?
Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you characterize universe as being flat?
Yeah.
But what keeps it flat?
And that's important. Riemann has suggested that space-time can be three different structures, if you will, in terms of form. I guess I'm talking about topological or topology. One is positive curvature. It can be a sphere, like space-time can be bent and folded into like a sphere. So that if you go around it far enough, then you'll come back to where you started. You'll see the back of your head. That's called positive curvature. The alternate is negative curvature, in which it's like a saddle that expands, if you will, that way, and expands in all different directions. The one in between, which is Euclidean geometry, and seems to be the one that we have, and I'll explain how we know that, seems to be flat. And what that means is that if you draw a very, very big triangle on it, the sum of the three angles of the triangle is 180 degrees. If you were to do the same thing, draw a triangle on the surface of our planet, the summation of the three angles is not 180 degrees. It's less than that. If you drew it on a saddle, the summation of the three angles is more than 180 degrees. So based on all kinds of evidence, including the cosmic microwave background, we're pretty sure at this stage within our abilities of resolution, and it's pretty darn good, is that we're living in a flat universe. Now, that's different than the fact that it's expanding faster and faster and faster because of dark energy, vacuum energy, cosmological constant, lambda, whatever you want to call it. All that's saying is if you merge the two, is you have a very flat universe that's expanding faster and faster and faster. I won't say at the edges because there is no edge, but in terms of creation of space-time.
Okay, so what keeps these flat universes parallel to each other?
Yeah, nobody really knows A, if that's true, and B, if why they collide. You know, there's a thing called the Casimir effect with a C, Casimir effect, Casimir, that if you put two metal plates very, 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 very close together, and gravity is not an issue here, is that they're going to kind of be pushed together. And it's thought that if there are these slabs or brains, B-R-A-N-S, B-R-A-N-E-S, out there, and they do come in contact, then some people call that an ekpyrotic implosion or explosion, and that's what creates the Big Bang. They all reside in what's either called the bulk, B-U-L-K, or what's called Hilbert, he was a famous mathematician's hyperspace. So they seem to be, if they're out there, floating in Never Never Land, or maybe I should say Ever Everland. It gets pretty amazing, doesn't it? What people can come up with, and sometimes it's right.
I don't see any other hands. You have some accolades in the chat. People are appreciative of all that you know.
Well, I wrote those, I think. Well, next week we're going to, if I can go back, we're going to talk about time travel, which in a way is even more interesting and even more conjectural, although time can be changed.
Okay. If you all can hang on for just a second, Leah Greenfield was going to join us for a message about something upcoming this week.
Yes, just
there
a
she is.
super quick message. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Fred, for teaching another amazing class. Took us beyond the horizons. Once again, we appreciate you. So tomorrow morning, we're having a very brand new class that I wanted to let people know about. I just sent an email blast, but wanted to try to make an announcement about Wayne Chapman's new class on modern dance. And no, you will not need any special clothing, but it is going to show some wonderful, beautiful movie clips, videos, and he's going to talk to you about one of the modern dance rebels, Isadora Duncan. And many people don't know her story, and it's really pretty scandalous. So that's tomorrow at 10. And he's going to do 2 weeks as a teaser and then come back in July. And then after John Brummett speaks on the Facebook Live page this Wednesday, John Brummett will be on the Facebook Live page, our LifeQuest page, at 9, and he will speak for about 30 minutes. And immediately following John Brummett is City Director Cappy Peck. She's the owner of Trios. She disagrees with the mayor and the governor about reopening restaurants, and she's going to tell you why and what her stance is as city director and as restaurant owner. So that'll be interesting. And then on Thursday morning, and all of this is on our website, Thursday morning is a Zoom class. It's a one-time Zoom class with attorney Sean Johnson. He's with the Attorney General's office, and he's going to provide a class specifically for LifeQuest members on how to avoid scams and frauds, many of which are affecting Arkansans. And so that's a good way to get all your questions answered about that topic, Thursday morning. Lots going on. It's all on the website. That's my plug.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the scams are specifically targeted towards COVID and coronavirus scams.
Yeah, he's going to open it up to some others, but yeah, there's some COVID-19 or coronavirus scary scams going on in Arkansas that FBI are looking into in the Attorney General's office, and Sean Johnson wanted to make our members aware of those. That's at 11:15 on Thursday morning. So all of these are this week. All of them are in the morning, and it's on the LifeQuest website, as is Fred's class. And so you can check out the LifeQuest website for that. Got a chat here, Gina. Is that anything? Oh, that's to you, Fred, from Janet. Says, thank you and fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate that feedback, Janet.
I appreciate
Okay, any
LifeQuest.
questions?
You guys are great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We appreciate you. You all have a good
Yeah.
week. Hope to see you in other classes. Bye.
Okay, see you next week, Fred. Yes,
Bye-bye.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.
Okay. Okay.